Again, welcome everyone. Nice to see you all again. Everyone had a good extended break. I got to see some people, maybe see some people over Zoom or whatever you chose to do. Just hope you had a good time. With that, I'd like to get started with a couple of agenda items. So we had a governance meeting on Monday around noon for those of you guys who couldn't make it. Just Lindsay, we can give a quick, I don't know, quick summary of it if you don't mind. I think that'd be warranted.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks to folks who were able to join, and we did record it if you weren't. I linked just a quick update or sort of where the issue for tracking the governance discussion is. So it's in the community repository. And so that's where we'll kind of formalize these sorts of things. But the gist of the conversation was that we'll sort of move forward formalizing two of the roles that we had talked about in the governance discussions a while back. So formalizing the role of a managing director and of director of operations. So Joe being the director of operations, myself being managing director. So what we'll do is we'll write that up. We'll start a pull request on the community repository and leave that open for a week or maybe two if we need to give folks a chance to provide any feedback on kind of the more specific wording or if there's things you'd like to see updated. So you can watch for that hopefully by the end of this week. That's when I would like to get off at least started before I leave on Friday. And then the other thing that came up, and I think some folks have added some, but I didn't see many. And so we might postpone this for another week. But in that document, let me just pull that up. We did start a bit of brainstorming around a mission statement for SimPEG. So we captured a bunch of words that we think might fit in a mission statement and want to sort of ask everyone if you'd be willing to take a crack at writing a mission statement. It doesn't need to be sort of, exactly what you're happy with or what you think this should be in the final form, but having a number of examples and sort of statements to look at and compare and sort of see what fits with all of us and what we like and what we want to highlight would be great. So I think for now you can put it, I think the best place would be in the document that's linked in that issue that I started, and I'll just drop that also in the notes. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I'll drop that in the notes and in the chat for anyone who's interested. I see Thibaut, I think, has taken a pass at one. And so I'd invite others to go ahead and yeah, give it a try. See what you think. And we can sort of reconvene on that in the next few weeks. Is there anything else from that conversation? There were a number of you who were there. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight from that conversation? No?
Maybe what we discussed about having a bit a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plans and collect certain PRs or issues to get into the next version, kind of having more a bit of structure, which is kind of.
Yes, exactly. So that was kind of the idea of both planning things out in terms of kind of what are maybe some longer term goals, and also thinking a bit about how can we better communicate what's coming out in releases, like what's sort of on the collective priority list of everyone, as well as, and this is something that would be great to get input and ideas from others on, is acknowledging new contributors and how you'd like to see sort of new contributions highlighted, celebrated within the community. We talked a little bit about maybe making use of the SimPEG Twitter account and having sort of a stream show up on our website of that. So if you have any other ideas, be fun to get creative around, celebrating new contributions and new folks joining the community. So definitely give that some thought, and we can start an issue to track that as well.
Okay. Yeah, excited to see this push forward. It's good to see it. Let's see, a couple other agenda items. At some point, I'd like to go through some of the current PR statuses. We could probably do that after the meeting today when we're talking about coding, if you'd like. As well as a reminder that I said last week that I'd have an open coding session if anyone wants to stick around after the meeting and just kind of hack away at some stuff and chat and interact a little bit. Yeah, in regards to the PR status, I think it'd be helpful to kind of just go through some of them and have an update about where they are and what people need to do with them still. There's been a few that kind of gotten stale on both ends as far as reviewers and contributions. So just want a general reminder of try to stay on top of them for everyone, including myself. That we can go on to some quick reports. I don't really quite see too many people here as far as people that have added to the notes, but if you would like, anyone does have any updates. I see Lindsay has a thing first. The only one so far with a quick report.
I was just looking for the link to my slides, but I'm giving a talk tomorrow with folks at CU Boulder. It's the computer science department. I'll share the slides around. I think it's open to anyone, so if you'd like to pop in, you're more than welcome to. Yeah, and I'll share the slides, and if you've got any suggestions for other things or other connections you'd like to see made, there's some good groups there where there are a fair bit of overlap, or sort of maybe overlap or complementary projects. So there's the Earth Lab at CU Boulder. They're developing a lot of educational resources on Earth analytics. That's led by Leah Wasser. Also, PyOpenSci is another project she's leading, which recently got some funding. And so PyOpenSci, in a sense, is a bit, a lot of the idea came from a project called rOpenSci that was really created to kind of create, in a sense, a bit of a mentorship network, as well as help promote sort of practices and standards for scientific open source software and promote interoperability between packages, as well as to grow the community of contributors and promote more diversity in who's involved in scientific open source software. So that is also being led at a CU Boulder. So very excited to connect with them. As well as there's the CSDMS group. I think that's the acronym. The community, it's always a mouthful. But they do basically modeling and sort of have developed some software to try and create like a layer of interoperability between surface dynamic modeling. And so that's another interesting group. I've connected with them a bit at AGU before. So yeah, so some interesting folks to be connecting with. And if you know of any others that we should try and give a shout out to in the presentation, that'd be much appreciated. That's about it for me. Other than I will be working on the community repo. So you can bug me if you don't see progress there this week.
And you were able to get all the, saw that you were able to get all of the branches switched over for most of the, I'm assuming you did most, if not all of the SimPEG, switching the masters to main, all of the repositories.
Yes, it should be all of the major ones. I don't know if like for some of the smaller or older repositories, I might have missed a few, but all of the major ones at this point should be updated. There's a line, thanks for bringing this up, Joe. There's a line that I put in the issue that you need to run, or 2 lines that you need to run to get those changes locally. And I will drop that into the meeting notes for folks after.
Good. Doesn't seem like you really ran into too many issues there then, so it seemed like it was good. Nice and quick.
Extremely straightforward. So if anyone has to do that or wants to do that on other repositories, it was very trivial, which is nice.
Devin, do you mind if you?
Yeah, sure. I just thought of a couple of things. So yeah, there's the EM1D, and then I think a few months ago I was asked to put some work in on the self-potential, which I think I was able to go and update that to be consistent with simulation branch, but I also wanted to have, I guess, not only a cell-centered, but also a nodal formulation. So there's still some work left to do on it, but when the discretized stuff has been finished, I think that won't be too hard to implement. The other thing was some conversations have gone around about where we're putting data for tutorials and examples and things, because we don't want to keep large data files in our repository. And then there's lots of questions about you know, accessing and where to put it, because if we use, say, UBC's cloud, that means anyone who doesn't work at UBC can't get at it. So Lindsay had set up I guess a Google storage bucket, and within GitHub/SimPEG/community, there is instructions for how you would be able to access a place for putting data sets. So if you made a tutorial, we've kind of got a process now where you're going to download data files from somewhere else and unpack them and then run the script. So it keeps things pretty lean within SimPEG, but gives us a place to put things.
That's good. And the other point is, like, the other major benefit of having them accessible like that is that if someone else goes and downloads the script, they should be able to run it without having to, you know, run it in a specific folder inside of the SimPEG repository. Or let's say they, you know, get it from Conda, they're not going to have all of those tutorial data sets that are inside the repository that would be expected. So it's better to have them accessible through some external means. Does anyone else have any reports on what they've been up to in SimPEG related things, or just kind of hoping FCG abstracts have been going well for those who have been working on them, as far as, especially with the extra 2 weeks or extra half a month of timing?
Yeah, I submitted one, but I hope not to have to touch it again. Like I'm happy to have one thing out of my plate. Who else is submitting one, by the way? I don't even know. Are you submitting one, Joe?
So I'm assuming just the one SimPEG related abstract this year then? Okay. And we'll still see if it goes off in person or not. I'm not quite sure what'll happen by then. I mean, it's in what, late September, early October, one of those times. Can't remember.
As far as I know, it seems they were going for like hybrid exhibition, like part online, part in person. And when you register, you can actually say if you prefer one or the other, or either one. So actually put either one for now, and we'll decide later.
Yep. Okay. Anyone else with quick reports? Quick updates, it's okay if not. For me, I went through a couple of the older, I started updating a couple of the older branches that I'd been working on as far as just going through boundary conditions. I put a few more updates there as far as testings. I'm still having a test. I still haven't quite figured out how to accurately do that boundary conditions on the curvilinear mesh for the weird conditions. Like it still works well when they're aligned with the axes, the boundaries, but just something's a little bit off when they're, for certain cases, when it's a little bit curved because of the way that the interpolation has to do the boundary or do the surface integral when it's like the vectors in weird directions and averaging them to faces properly. And it's just a little bit off, but it's everything else. It works well for all the other types of meshes. And the only type that I was having issues with was like edge vectors that are defined on edges, which comes from like the curl operator. So the other operators work well just because they're either a vector defined on a face or it's a scalar. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to care about like all of the orientations. So it should actually work pretty well for all of the DC related stuff. I just kind of did some quick math in my head. So I did get a chance to look through that outline, so we can have a meeting later about that if you'd like. But I have a clear path on how we can implement those other boundary conditions for the nodal problem. It should work out pretty easily. It's just a little bit of an A matrix, or the A matrix needs to be updated a little bit. It adds like a few elements along the diagonal every once in a while, essentially. So it's still a nice symmetric matrix.
That'll be great. It's a little bit annoying because we're using Neumann for nodal and then mixed for cell center, and it'll be nice to be consistent.
Yep. So I haven't tested it yet. I just basically wrote out the math for myself to see like, oh yeah, this is what I have to do. These are the matrices I need for it. I'm like, okay, I've got all those. So I'd like to, hopefully we can, my thoughts on bringing it in right now is just it's close. So the edge, like the edge vector integral for the curvilinear mesh is close. It's just a little bit off as far as accuracy. So it could be acceptable at this point, but just have a note that it might be a little bit off. And what I'm testing it on is I'm testing it on this kind of spherically shaped rectilinear mesh. So so the boundaries are not directly aligned with the axes, and that's what's kind of throwing a little bit of the accuracy issues in there.
It's probably more a chat topic, but it only probably depends a lot on the methods, which you might have a better insight. How much does it actually depend on the boundary condition, assuming you put the boundary far enough?
Well, I mean, if you put them far enough away, like it still hasn't, it always has an effect on the matrix. Like but if you do put it far enough away, it lessens their effect. But if you can get accurate boundary conditions, you can really, tighten up the mesh, and you don't have to discretize it with super far out or anything.
Yeah, so it helps to keep it small. Yeah, because either you have perfect boundary that it would reflect reality, or you're so far away that you can't see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it still has an effect on things. It's like it's still there. So it could be interesting to see if it changes your accuracy, the accuracy problems that you guys had. kind of incorporating more accurate boundary conditions on those meshes that you had before.
Yeah, because we actually saw that the codes using the same boundary condition had similar behavior. I think it was in the 1D case, but I just never did a really investigation. So I wondered if someone did something like this. How does the result change if you swap the boundary condition? I don't know. Would be interesting if you get someone, if you get a master student who doesn't know what to present on next SEG, get him to use all your boundary conditions and play around.
Yeah, I think actually, like, speaking of that, doing that for MT might be interesting. I don't know how much impact you would get for controlled source, because as you said, if you got big enough boundary condition, then your problem is solved. So
yeah. Yeah, but MT, you're everywhere.
That's not the case. That's the driving force. So
yeah,
it's more important.
I do remember, like, with what we've done with the MT so far for 1D and 2D, the boundary conditions worked pretty well as far as getting accurate solutions for the layered cases and kind of
that's good.
Moving through, like, it worked pretty well. So
speaking of that, Joe, where are we on that 2D MT code? Is that like done? Is that developed, or more things to do?
A few little more things to do. Like I said, I still need to work. I still need to get the receivers hooked up properly for all of the different, like all the different components. Just have them hooked up into there. But we basically have it locally in a few notebooks, but just kind of translating that into the code needs to happen. I might be able to take a little bit of time after this to go through it and kind of hack away at edit this afternoon and get it up to snuff there. Because I don't know, Lindsay, what you've seen, but I think it's definitely really close. It's just a matter of just kind of making sure everything is formatted and in there correctly. Also, it's dependent on the discretized boundary condition branch. So that's why I kind of said that it might be worth it at this point just to pull it in and then have a note that it could be, there are some accuracy issues on that. Does anyone have any other discussion items they'd like to talk about? I know you kind of dropped in late here, so if you've got anything.
No, got nothing new here.
Maybe one other quick thing, this is also a question for Sagi, is Transform is coming up. And so question for Sagi is there anything you need from the group here as you're thinking about prepping stuff?
Yeah, I think as I'm keep saying I'm starting. I sort of started, I loaded up the Raglan data and look at what's been done. And actually, I got a quick question, Dom. So so Devin's tutorial is great. So it's actually sort of shows the A to Z example, how to run the Mac code. But I was wondering, you got like quite a few drivers and kind of those IO types of stuff where things make things easier. Like, okay, you got a data. I just want to run the code and want to get a result. Where is it located? And do you have a place that you can point to that I can take a look?
You're saying for IOs for magnetics?
Yes.
Yeah. So all of the IOs that I've been making, I've put in SimPEG utils, IO utils.
No, I was asking more like an example. So I think I kind of walked through your examples and it looked great.
Okay.
but like I was hoping to have a little bit simpler version, like, okay, like just generating a mesh automatically, for instance. I think Adam has something like that, I guess. So I was hoping like to have some sort of resources like that.
No, I didn't make anything that just goes on autopilot and kind of does it all. It was sort of done deliberately because I wanted people to read and understand thoroughly what each step was, what was required.
Yeah.
So I didn't make any like simple example that will just auto-generate the mesh based on your survey.
Okay.
But they might exist. Somebody might have done something, but I didn't do it personally.
Okay.
So what I have published publicly before the SAG is what I just posted in the chat. Is basically it's a script, right? And then you have an input file, and then you just put in your data, your mesh specs, and then you basically can just run it without having to read code. I don't know if you're thinking something more intermediate than this, or.
I think at this point, like, so the crowd is generally geologists or geoscientists that have like maybe that much geophysics background.
Yeah.
So I to aim more conceptual level and basically running the code and changing the parameters and see what are the impacts. And sort of my goal was just like letting them know that kind of fundamental ideas of the inversion, like data misfit and how the regularization works, and sort of like even more like limitations of the inversions and potential and possibility by like sort of putting a relevant information, what you can get out of it. So I'm hoping to use the MAG as a first example, and then just showing the Raglan data, for instance, and then, okay, like by looking at the data, you're not getting much information and see how inversion can do better. And then I'm making a little bit more complexity using, okay, potential field like relatively low resolution, but let's use a little bit higher resolution method like electromagnetic, for instance, and show like, okay, here's a little bit better resolution, but still limited. But yeah, so yeah, that was sort of just a general idea that I had. So I'm at the MAG, and
you still want to be able to show it in a notebook, but basically I just have a driver function. Is that what you have in mind?
Yeah. So I'm hoping to have at least two demo, one for MAG and one for EM1D, at least like a single sounding, and show a couple of inversions. And maybe I could find some real data, have a well data as well, so I can show one-to-one comparison or something like that. And doing that as a demo will be nice.
Yeah, so it looks like this driver, it's pretty old, right? So it's built to read a JSON. Not even, I think it's just a text file at this point. Okay. Yeah, it would need to be reworked. But I can give you basically a Python file that reads a JSON, and then you would have to basically just change the keywords, right, in a dictionary. So you basically have a dictionary, just change the keyword and then rerun the function. Would that work?
I mean, at this point, like what I basically need is just a mesh generator. Like, okay, if you got a point magnetic data,
okay.
If there's an automatic mesh generator, I mean, that's probably enough for me to start with, because I think that's most time-consuming part, I guess, in general.
Yeah, that's good. And then we can just hide create a utils and just hide all the calls under the hood. Basically, you would be supplying points and then the type of parameters for each, and then just fire it up, right? Get the mesh back. Yeah.
And if anybody have like a good suggestion where we can make an impact to either geologists or whoever geoscientist that could potentially use applied geophysical technique, I'm very open, because I don't have that much idea at this point. So if you have any idea, please let me know. That'll be very good.
Yeah. You need 3D viz. That's the point of connection, right? You want to see it.
Yes.
Sagi, do you have any ideas about like who will be attending? Because you said there's going to be geologists, but do you have any further breakdown about that?
I don't know. I asked Matt, but it seems like seems not very clear who. Like it seems pretty broad, and yeah, I asked Matt about the application, but yeah, it wasn't clear. So I was gonna like just a bit broad, like minerals and water. I'm not sure that's really hitting the target. Dieter may have a better idea about that.
It's hard to say because you don't really have to register. You can watch it live on YouTube. So I don't think you have a lot of hard figures, except for the ones who do register. And I don't think you have to sign up for particular tutorials. You can just join the channel. So I would expect that like in the few days before the tutorial, you probably will see who is flocking into your channel. Definitely you're on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, I think I don't know exact date, but
so Friday, Saturday, the hack is going. Monday, the first tutorial. So I would expect that like Sunday, Monday, people will start to look into the tutorials and join the channels and things like this. But it's a bit late for you then to start the presentation then. So yeah, it doesn't help you.
Yes, I'm gonna just work at the high level.
But generally, there will be a lot of. I expect there will be a lot of students, but as well academics and practitioners. So you have a bit of everything. I mean, Lindsay knows probably more from, or everyone who was last year in SimPEG tutorial. I would expect a similar crowd at least. And you were there too, Sogi, right? So
yeah, I was.
I mean, there were problems from how to install SimPEG to more advanced inversion questions. So you have the whole spectrum of issues.
Yeah, I wouldn't go like it's 2 hours. I wouldn't go into too much details. I'd probably just leave at the very high level and just like as maybe even a form of app. Like, okay, you set the inversion primary run and see how that looks like. Potentially we can show some sort of 3D view as well. But that's probably it. Anyway, that's where am I.
And anyway, anyone from SimPEG, keep the time free. There will be the Slack channel like last year where people can ask questions. But then there will also be gather rooms. So people that have problems following might be in the gather town and ask per video chat things. So the more SimPEG folks is around, the better to help stranded, lost folks to get installing SimPEG and things like this. We don't really know how that turns out. So maybe no one is there in Gather and everyone in Slack, or no one in Slack and everyone in Gather, or everyone just using passively on YouTube. We don't know. We will see. Next year we know better. But you should try it out next week. So you want to stream if you have time one day next week.
I will.
To test the streaming. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I think I might ended up building a simple, like a magnetic inversion app. So like a kind of DC app that we have for Myanmar project. So yeah, I probably run by you guys like a couple of times, I guess, just to make sure that I'm doing okay. That's where am I.
Well, if you wanna start, right, you could just tweak the Jupyter app that I have on GeoApps, because the only difference for you is you're probably you're pulling data from the drive, but all the buttons, all the widgets are going to be there to be able to see the data and then change your inversion parameters, right? You're probably 90% there already. You can just steal it and tweak it.
If there's something already there, I might just use it. That would be great.
I'll point it to you, and then yeah, you can talk.
So, and so anyway, speaking of transform, just a reminder of the dates again for everyone.
I think it's 20th. I'll post it in the meeting notes later. And
it started on the 16th, the hack.
Yeah,
Friday.
I think I'm on the last day, 20th.
No, the second. You're on Tuesday, right? 20th. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Then
yeah.
The hackathon starts on the 16th. Are there what kind of projects are involved in the hackathon so far, or people? If there's anything like SimPEG should like, oh yeah, let's set up a group or start up a project there to hack away at something on that day.
So there are so far.
EM1D seems like one that I think multiple people want to have input or do a few things before trying to bring it into SimPEG. And it's something that we really want to bring in.
I can, here are the hacks that are already proposed, but feel free to propose one also a SimPEG specific. There's carbon capture and storage. There's SegWySAC, well correlation, visualization, stats. It's actually more than I expected, more than last year.
I'll copy that to the notes as well, just to have them there. But just encourage anyone to get involved with that if they'd like. Some good stuff, I think. So from one of the ones that I found interesting, hopefully I can get at least help on the discretized side is the to subsurface from subsurface thing.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Also, part of that, I'd like to support, tetrahedral meshes as well from like GeoSci and stuff. Adding that kind of cross compatibility would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, if we get that in and then really have a straightforward workflow, how to get a GeoSci model to SimPEG, I think that would be awesome. How you make a very complicated geological model and forward model it, magnetics, DC, anything you have. I think that would be nice. Cool. And there are 20 or 21 tutorials now. Shall I put that link too for those meeting notes for the ones that?
Might as well. Can't hurt.
Can't hurt. So there are a lot of tutorials. One is Sogate, and it's actually quite heavy on EM and potentials because there is Fatianda, there's PyGimli. So we're probably overrepresented currently at this transform at least.
Yeah.
It's all that. Like Bain is there, and yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, and it's essentially what, next weekend it starts? Right, that'd be
weekend in a week, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll probably have another reminder after the next meeting, but just keep an eye out for it. Other than that, any other last minute things before we stop the recording that people would like to bring up and make note of?
You guys talked about governance already?
The what?
Governance, what we were talking about.
Yeah, we discussed it a little bit, just kind of give it overview.
That's good.
Yeah, just make sure to add that any thoughts you have as far as the mission statement.
Yeah, good mind. Yeah.
Thanks for participating in my Wednesday polls. It seems to be a very one-sided thing in SimPEG. It's inversion and objective function.
What's the poll for anyway, Dieter? Why did you?
I had a look today at functions of mine, and I called one misfit function, but could have equally called a cost function or objective function. And then I thought about, and optimize, I think in SimPEG it's also called optimize, right? The module. But then we usually talk about inversion, and then, yeah. I mean, there are so many terms floating around depending what you mean and where you are. And so I just thought, I'm wondering what people think, or what comes first in their mind. I think we all know, no matter what term we see, what it, yeah. But still, I'm sure everyone has a preference. So I was just wondering.
I guess the way I kind of connect them in my mind is that it's like, oh, we minimize an objective function to perform an inversion. We optimize an objective function to invert. Okay then. Well, I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone. If you feel free to stay on afterwards if you'd like to just kind of chat around and hack away at a few little things here and there for SimPEG related stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thibaut, I'm gonna stick around for